Hello, Joanne. Good to see you
Peter,
again.
from way across the pond, it's so fabulous to see you again. It's been 4 years, 4.5 actually.
Wow, who's counting? Jeez. But it was so nice to see you in person though on our shores, 4.5 years ago. It was really a delight to meet you for the first time. I'd only ever seen you on videos, and then to see you there in the flesh and giving that talk to the room was really refreshing to me.
Oh, that's great. It goes back to there's nothing like being in person, and we haven't been able to do that in the last 15, 16 months.
Yeah.
And so everybody is ready now to get out there, be in person, shake hands, hug. I mean, I don't know, it's still a personal choice.
Yeah.
But we know what it's like when we couldn't be in person.
Mind you, at the same time, the pandemic's done me a bit of a favor, ironically, because people are so used to doing things on Zoom and online that I have now more clients in the US than I do in Australia right now, because they've discovered that they can get value even if you're not located in the USA. It doesn't matter where you are geographically speaking, as long as you deliver value now. So that's a good thing. I think it's made the world a little bit smaller, even though it's less physically pleasing, I guess.
And that's the great thing. We can reach people any place. And it has brought the world closer in many ways. And it's also separated us in many ways. But
right.
One of the things that happened at the beginning of the pandemic, people were reaching out genuinely and asking how they could help. They weren't selling anything, just really, how can I help you? And I hope that continues. I'm not sure it will, but that was genuine.
Well, I hope that it will, but I have my doubts, and here's why. The little anecdote from Sydney in Australia, right? When we had the first lockdown, we're now currently in the second, hopefully just a mini one. When we had the first lockdown, there was no traffic on the road. People were staying at home, and so hence the traffic just wasn't there. And it was not really nice to drive at the speed limit, not being in a hurry to get somewhere and go, being all stressed up to the eyeballs, to get somewhere in time. And people were a lot more courteous, like people would let other people in, and you waited at the stop sign and all that sort of thing. And I remember thinking at the time, I hope this continues after the pandemic's over, that people are just a bit nicer to each other and less crazy, And guess what? Bang! Honking horns and squeezing into the traffic and not letting somebody, merge the lane. so people are still people, and as soon as it gets competitive again, our competitive streak comes out, and we go, out come the elbows. So that's why I don't have high hopes that it'll be a kinder world in the long run, but it's nice in the meanwhile, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We've learned a lot over this last 15, 16 months. We have.
Yeah. And hopefully sales have learned a lot too, because whatever worked for you in 2018 and 19 to get prospect engagement, lead gen, and customer contact doesn't work anymore, because people just don't want to be bothered, with unsolicited calls, with what's called pitch slapping now. Pitch slapping, when you connect to somebody on LinkedIn and then hit them up with a sales pitch in the second email, and of course all the SDRs with the unsolicited and often unqualified phone calls to supposed decision makers.
I get pitches and invitations. I mean, it's all automated. It's just ridiculous. I had somebody write to me he wanted to talk to me about oil and gas investments in Texas. And then I had somebody else in financial services with this whole speech telling me what he could do for me. No idea about me, so that's bad behavior at the beginning, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then you're right. If you accept something and in the response they pitch, I see about 30% of them do. And I just remove the connection. That's it. I'm done.
And that's really lazy selling as well. That you just, it just becomes a numbers game. You hit up 10,000 people hoping that 3 will be interested. That's just crazy. And what happens to the other 9,997 people that you've cheesed off in the process? They just cut themselves off from the next guy that wants to contact them. And as a consequence, we're actually ruining the game for every sales rep out there, because the buyers will just not take your calls, and they'll not accept your LinkedIn requests, and they will not read your emails.
And sales has a bad name anyhow, and it's really reinforced that.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's lazy. And just because the technology allows you to spam 10,000 people, it doesn't mean that you should.
Right. Well, one of the things that a lot of sales reps told me that they missed, especially in the UK, they said, we used to get for lunch or go out to the pub for a beer. Yeah. And that's when we really got to sit down and know people personally.
Yes.
And have that connection. We learned about their families, their values, and all of that. And so they were missing that. And the thing is, you can do that virtually, just as we're doing now, but there's still something that's missing a little bit. There's nothing like being in person, but I also don't think that salespeople really use the technology the way they could.
So you said something very interesting there, because sitting down to lunch with the prospect doesn't scale, right? You can't do that with 10,000 people. So we've actually tried to take a shortcut, which is why I call it lazy, by saying, let's just come straight to the point and go, are you in or are you out? It's kind of like going up to somebody in a bar and saying, your plays are mine.
That's right.
And if you ask enough people, then somebody might say yes out of desperation, but it's not a good look to anybody, really, right? So by being smarter about whom you contact and how you contact them and what you say when you do, especially that last bit, because we don't want to ambush, we want to engage, and there's a real art form to engaging, rather than just tapping somebody on the shoulder, hey, and say, how about it?
Well, salespeople are impatient, and it's not their fault.
No, they're made to be impatient because of the pressure from above.
Sales leaders say you have to send X number of emails, this, and this. Yeah. So they have to do what they're expected to do. But it takes a little bit of time to build a relationship, and they don't understand. Well, I've had experience many times when I've been in a call, maybe it's been a half hour, we might have gone longer. We never have talked about business yet.
Yeah.
We have to schedule the next call, and those are the best kind of calls you can have.
Yeah, because you build up rapport, a bit of trust, relationship. I spoke to a local sales VP of a 3-letter acronym global IT company here. And he said, we're looking for our reps, we're looking for 5 times coverage. 5 times coverage. He said, because we usually win 20% of our deals, and so we need to have 5 times coverage to make target, a quota. And in my mind, I was thinking, why don't they just choose better? Why aren't they just a bit more judicious on which bit they go after, rather than saying, we need more numbers, we need more. Because doing more of the same thing is not going to give you a better result. We all know that, what Einstein said about that. Right? But this guy said, no, we require all of our reps to have 5 times coverage. And these are big deals. So 5 times coverage is not easy to come by. So guess what goes into the CRM? Everything.
Well, there's this saying, it's like throwing spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah.
Some of it will stick, but most of it doesn't.
Most of it slides off. Yeah.
It's just, when you look at companies, depends. So if I'm an account executive and I have named accounts, how many deals do I need in a year? It's not 1,000, So it's really focusing very much on with whom do I need to interact with? Who are the clients, being very, very narrow in who you want to meet. And then finding out who they're connected with, who they know, getting an introduction to that person.
Yeah.
But that's not happening, Peter. It's not. There's just still, everything's automated coming at us, and they're just holding on to the way they used to work.
Well, there is
open mind.
There is that, but also when you realize that each account rep, account manager even, has between 50 and 100 accounts to look after, you can't possibly get to know everybody. So you've got 2 choices, right? You can go the lazy route and spam everybody, hoping that somebody will need something at the time when you reach out to them and they have a need for whatever it is that you're selling coincidentally. Or you can do what you're promoting with 25 years of history behind you, that you should be judicious in terms of whom you contact, how you contact them, what you say when you do, and to build up a bit of rapport and even a relationship and maybe even a bit of trust beforehand. Just do more with fewer prospects rather than doing just a little bit with everyone.
Well, and you get larger deals. But here's the thing, everybody talks about relationships and how important that is.
Mm.
So I have a way of thinking about relationships. How do you know you have a great relationship with a client?
If they take your call.
Call them or contact them, they'll call you back. Because you're of value to them.
Yeah, but they value you.
And that's what we need to be, is of value to our clients.
I thought of something as you were speaking, and that is, at the beginning of the quarter, your sales VP will say, take your time, get to know your prospects and to build a bit of rapport and relationship. The week before the end of the quarter, they go, where's that deal? so it's like, do as I do as I say, but don't do as I do. And I tell you one thing at the beginning of the quarter and something else at the end. And so no wonder reps just get confused and they start being wide and shallow rather than deep and narrow.
I've had reps tell me when I was looking at buying a service that it was the end of the quarter and they needed like one more deal. That is really not a good way to sell. But so that brings up the topic: should we really have quarterly goals, or should we more have goals around the number of clients and number of relationships we need? I don't have an answer to that, but you're right, because if they're only focused on the number, missing out on
and the number by the end of the month or end of the quarter by an arbitrarily set date, that just creates stress. And then the VP of sales will put the stress onto the reps put the stress onto the customer, and the customer expects a huge discount by the end of the month, and they actually aim for that now. We've trained them to expect a discount, and we give it to them, destroying enormous value. And also it creates undesirable behavior in the sales reps simply because of the pressure that they've been put under. And I really like the idea that you just spoke about, and that is that there should be some sort of metric in the sales rep to measure the quality of their engagement. Not just pipeline and revenue and ARPU and everything else, but also measure the quality of the engagement you have with this client, because I think it'll be a nicer world for both buyers and for sellers if that happened.
When we met in person, I went to a lot of conferences. And I remember one conference, every breakout I went to, there was a sales leader, and they just pounded home, we need more leads, we need more leads, we need more leads. And I'm sitting there saying, no, you need more qualified leads.
Yeah, you need better leads, not more. Yeah.
Right? They have this stuff in the pipe, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And so I think the direction has been going the wrong way. And it's not supportive of our salespeople either. Yeah. It's not bringing out their best behaviors.
No, that's right. But it's hard to change somebody who's been doing it all their life, and it's what they're used to. It's what's being expected of them, like from the CEO down. But I think we have a chance now, because the pandemic is a great catalyst for change. People are looking at the way they've been doing things because the old ways no longer work. So they've got to come up with something new. They go, well, what else is there? And lo and behold, they might even discover referral selling, because it's worked in the past, but it's not lazy. It takes effort. It takes smarts.
From June last year through the first quarter of this year, I was busier than I've ever been.
Wonder why?
Every single client had one focus.
Yeah.
How do I get referrals from my clients?
Yeah.
Because no one's asking. And they're our highest value revenue source. But these companies were smart. In fact, one company had already built out their whole referral plan and asked me to come in and work with their sales team specifically on client referrals. So they got it. People understand the power of referrals, but they're just not implementing it. And you know what I like about what you do, Peter, is you have a process. People need that. They need something they can follow step by step by step. They need guidance because everybody's going every which direction today. They just don't know where to go. And that's our job, is to help them.
Absolutely. Our job is to help them and to guide them and to educate them and to help them to sell in a nicer way, I guess, in a more engaging way. So I make a distinction between ambushing people with unsolicited spam and emails and connection requests on LinkedIn, or ambush or engage, you know, and I'd rather engage with a smaller number of high quality prospects in a good way than spamming 1,000 people willy-nilly and hoping that somebody will be interested in what I'm selling. But it's funny how things come around again, because we've let the technology rule and said, you know, just because our marketing stack can spam 10,000 people, we should do it. But that's just lazy, right? So people have come around again to wanting to build rapport, wanting to build relationships, and kind of a little bit of you know, old-fashioned values have crept back in, and that's why you've seen such a revival in the work that you do, and with 25 years of experience behind you, you've got a lot of value to add to those people because they've just never been exposed to it before, I guess.
You know, when I think about what's changed in the past 25 years and what hasn't changed, 25 years ago, when I was working with a client and discovered, oh yeah, referrals, they're great. I you know, in all my sales and sales management experience, the best business. So I did what I call my feet on the street research, and I talked to sales people, sales execs I knew. Yeah. And I said, do you like to get referrals? Well, it may seem like a dumb question, but I needed to hear their answer. Now, their answer is the same today. Okay, we have credibility, we're pre-sold, we get the meeting in one call, there's no cost, the conversion rate is well more than 50%, most of the time 70%. So I heard all of that. And then I asked the second question, do you have a referral system, a methodology with a strategy, metrics, skills, and accountability for results?
Yeah.
Well, you can guess what the answer was then.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was no, and it's no today. Yeah. That has not changed. Yeah. It's still no. And so what's happening is, I mean, I have had a sales leader who's a friend who said to me, oh, Joanne, I just tell my people to go get referrals. So I said, yeah, I can be a little snarky. I said, well, how's that working for you? Yeah. Dead silence, because it doesn't work.
You know, there's a parallel in my world to that. I ask people, do they have a sales process? Because I talk about, you know, having a sales funnel that's focused on how customers want to buy, not on how we want to sell. And they go, oh, either they say, yes, we have one. But then when you ask to see it, they go, oh, it's actually our deal approval process, so it's internal looking. Or they go, no, we don't have a sales process, but we hire good salespeople and they'll bring a sales process with them, won't they? Which then means that every sales rep has a different approach to engage with a client, and the client will get a different experience depending on which rep they talk to. So it's the same thing. They say, yes, we have a process, but then when you drill down deeper, they go, actually, we're just winging it. You know, we're just making it up as we go along. And how good would it be for any organization if they had a proven and scalable sales process that a new rep can just plug into and hit the ground running from day one, rather than going, oh, you know, who's who in the zoo and who do I talk to and where's our value proposition? Oh, what's our content? And they've kind of, no wonder they need 3 months to ramp up, you know, or longer.
That's right.
And then 6 months later, they're gone because they couldn't get quota. So it's you know, something's got to give. We can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, frankly.
I heard a speaker at a sales meeting a bunch of years ago, and we're talking about when you have your company sales meeting. And the speaker said, at our company sales meeting, nobody can talk about our products, right?
Good. Yes, good.
Talk about who our buyers are and what we bring to them, but no product, because that's easiest to do, right? You can do that anytime. You don't need to do that when everybody's together. And I remember that. I thought it was brilliant.
I'll take it one step further, though. I'll say we're not allowed to talk about who we are as a company, how many staff we have, how many locations we're represented in, and what our share price is, and all these things. When organizations start a presentation off with, this is who we are, I call that we syndrome, because we go, we do this and we have that, and we are so great and you should just buy from us. The customer's not interested in who you are until they understand what's in it for them. So I teach all my clients to talk about what their customers experience and the outcome that they create for their customers, because that'll draw a conversation. Then somebody will go, oh, I want that too for my business. So how do I get that? Right? But just talking about yourself and saying we do this and we have that just bores everybody to tears.
Well, and I'm very similar, Peter, because when we're asked what we do, people can't wait to say everything we do. Look, and what I say is nobody cares about you.
Yeah.
They don't care about me. They don't care about you. They just care about what you do for them.
Exactly.
And so you don't talk about yourself,
but
you talk about the problem that your client faced. And because that's the emotional connection, right? They're going to say, oh, yeah, that's what's happening here. And then they're engaged in a very different way. It is so hard for people, Peter, to make that shift and not talk about themselves, because all they want to do, right, say everything. There is a point in time where you can say everything.
Yeah.
But it's to different people at different times. When you're talking to a senior person, you're not going to talk chapter and verse. When you're talking to a user, yes, they have to know how to do X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
So it's very different, but it is a huge shift. Nobody has been taught that way. Well, so I'm glad we're on the same page there.
Well, even worse, that they're taught to start the presentation off about themselves. We do this and we have that, right? And then forgive me for saying this, but the product marketers make it sound like all you need to talk about is the features and the functions of the product or the service, right? But I actually have a very simple 3-step formula for telling that story, and anybody can do it, and it's not rocket science, and it actually will make it feel less like selling to both the seller and to the buyer. And the formula is that we talk about the client in terms of what they looked like when we met them, their pain points, the consequences of those pain points, the consequences on the organization and the people and the customers. Then step 2 is what we did for them. So we implemented our XYZ and within 3 months and blah, blah, blah. And then step 3 is what changed for the customer. Right? Well, we now have a much more engaged workforce, and our customer satisfaction has gone through the roof. Our profits up and our revenue is up, and everybody's happy. And we've got longer sales force tenure than our competitors. Nothing about the product or the service or the brand or the locations or anything. Just about what's in it for the customer, and then the customer will get engaged, exactly as you said, right? And they'll do something that I call the lean forward moment, right? It's when they go lean forward and they go literally lean forward and they say, Joanne, that sounds really interesting. Tell me more about that, right? And that's the exact point when they've given you the explicit permission to sell, when they lean forward and say, tell me more. So there is an exact point. You're absolutely right.
So our process is very similar then. I leave out the second step for the initial conversation. So I'll say, nobody wants to hear everything you did at this point. All you have to say is working together, and then go and match the results they got and quantify it if possible to the problem they stated. And then you get those 2 pieces coming together, and it's just beautiful when it happens.
And they probably ask you, how did you do that? And then you can go,
and they do, right?
I'm glad you asked.
But then you can't go into a 10-minute rant about how you did it, right? Because everybody has a different need to know.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if they want to know more, they'll ask you.
And you said something else that's really clever just before, namely that you need to speak the language of the person that you're speaking to. So if you're speaking to a CEO, You want to say, this is a safe decision. Your board's going to smile on you when you make this decision, right? You're not going to get in trouble. The CFO wants to know, is it a good return on the investment? Maybe even internal rate of return if it's a product. The IT manager will want to know, what's the support like? Is it going to give me more problems? You know, when something goes wrong, what will happen? What's your track record in that context? The user will want to know, am I climbing up a steep learning curve, or is it easy to learn? You know, so there's I think it was corporate executive board that says there's 6.3 decision makers on average in a complex, high value deal. You know? So you don't have one mystical single decision maker any longer. It's not the CEO that decides. There's a committee. But the committee consists of different people that look at the same solution from a different perspective with a different lens. And so you've got to speak to each one of them from their perspective. And miraculously, when they come together to decide which vendor they will go with, the CFO goes, well, ticks my box. The CIO goes, well, ticks my box too. The CEO goes, well, it sounds like, it sounds good to me as well. And the user will go, look, I like this one because they're easy to deal with. And bingo, they've all decided that you're the perfect vendor for them, and it becomes a no-brainer that they choose you, but only because you've done your homework and you've addressed each single objective from their perspective. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, and you also have to find out a few other things, and this is what happens when you get that introduction to the prospect, whether it's a CFO, CEO, CSO, whatever. They're senior, and you get the meeting, one call, right? And you get their trust, you have credibility, and you have the inside track. I found they tell me things that I didn't was surprised because you have that relationship already.
Yeah.
And you'll find out things other people don't know. So I say you have the inside track and the deal is yours to lose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you need to find out from that person who makes the final decision, who has the budget, who's an influencer, and who should I watch out for?
Yeah.
You'll get all that information when you get a referral. They tell you that.
So the thing that sticks out to me from what you just said is that getting the referral is one thing, but then knowing what to do and what to say to the referralee is the key, right? Because you can get a referral, you can still mess it up in the first call, right? You can snatch defeat from the mouth of victory. But if you know what to say and how to engage and you have a method behind it, just like your method teaches people, that's really the key, isn't it?
It is. And so when you get a referral from someone your prospect knows and trusts, here's what happens. It's subtle, but it's real. The trust your prospect has for the person who's referred you transfers to you, the salesperson.
Yeah.
So when you have that conversation, it's a very different conversation. In many cases, it's almost like we're friends. How do you know so-and-so?
Yeah.
And it's great. They know why they're taking the meeting. It's no surprise. And the relationship is formed right then and there.
Yeah.
And trust, which is so hard to get, is immediately. You have it, so you can't blow it.
Well, you have upfront credo, right? That it's like you meet somebody at a party and you go, oh, how do you know so and so? Oh, we've got something in common. Oh, but we must be, you basically come pre-qualified, right? So your guard doesn't need to be up because you come pre-qualified, and so people can actually take you seriously, and you don't have to prove who you are and that you have something valuable to say because somebody else already vouched for you. So that gets you a big step forward in the right direction right from the start.
It does. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing, Peter.
Well, you've been doing it for a long time so successfully, and I'm really glad that it's people are rediscovering referral selling because it's the right way to go about business. And like I said, it's a much nicer way of selling, and it's a much nicer way of being sold to if people do it well.
That's right. It absolutely is. And like you need a process or a system because people need those guidelines. Step by step, what do I do? Because they haven't had any guidance. So they've just been flapping their wings out there, not knowing what to do. And it's not complicated, but just give me the steps. We completed this, and then we are really advisors right?
Yeah.
To take them through that process.
So having said the word advisor, what advice would you give to somebody who's not not successful in selling right now because of the pandemic and the limited number of opportunities? What advice would you give them right now?
Build relationships, because that's how deals are done. There's so much focus on technology, and technology can be a great support, but I think it's not being used that way.
Mm-hmm.
People are sitting back and waiting for technology to do stuff for them.
Yeah.
And so focus on building relationships. What I would say is your clients, make a list of all the clients you have, the names of every single person in every company you've come in contact with, and have the list go with the people you know best at the top, where you have the best relationships, because those are the conversations you need to have now. And what value can I provide them? And then figure out who they know in other companies, and what about other divisions of the company they're in. We don't always think about referrals going that way as well.
Yeah.
But that may not be what the CSO is telling them to do. But that's my advice. No pitching, just build those relationships and honor the trust that somebody's put in you. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it agrees with my philosophy as well, because I think less is more. More is just more, and more is not better, but less is more. So if you do a better job with a smaller number of highly desirable prospects, you will get more success than if you spam 10,000 of them. and as you say, you need to have a process. You need to know, who are my ideal clients? Where do they hang out? How do I get to them? When I get to them, what do I say to engage with them? And of course, having a referral would be a great intro into that step. Then you need to know how to fend off your competitors. You need to know how to win the deal. You need to know how to get your customers to become repeat customers. And then last but not least, you need to understand how you can turn your repeat customers into advocates for your business that then refer more business to you. And that's where we have an overlap, you and I, because referrals are so important in business, particularly now when there's fewer opportunities out there and the same number of reps going after everything. And you just got to stick out from the crowd and be different, and be the purple cow in a field of brown cows, and make yourself different.
Yes, Peter, you do. We've talked about a lot of ways to do that.
That's absolutely right. Look, Joanne, it was an absolute pleasure seeing you again. Thank you very much for making the time to talk to me.
It's always great to visit with you, and I learned so much every time we talk.